Kenya today, as you've heard, celebrated 50 years of independence, and along with that event came some pretty interesting statistics. It turns out that the World Bank's total debt financing to Kenya's government over the last 5 decades amounts to more than 1 trillion shillings. That's about $11.7 billion. Now, government data also indicates that the World Bank has funded public sector projects worth about $8.5 billion and invested another $4.3 billion in supporting 23 national and 6 regional projects aimed at mitigating the effects of climate change. Another $166 million has been received from the World Bank to take care of economic risks within the country. East Africa's biggest economies have launched an integrated real-time cross-border payment system. It's designed to cut transaction bottlenecks which businesses have faced to date and bolster intra-regional trade. Now, each member state currently has its own payment systems, and prior to this regional one coming into force in late November, that essentially meant that cross-border transfers would take anywhere between 1 and 2 days to be settled. While banks from the 5 member states have all accepted the system, those in Burundi and Rwanda are expected to implement it later on once they put the necessary infrastructure in place. The payment system is an early step towards the creation of a monetary union within the 5-nation East African Community Trade Bloc, which member states hope to establish within the next 10 years. Now, a video of a flash mob tribute to the former president Nelson Mandela has gone viral after one of the largest grocery store chains in the world teamed up with the gospel choir to honor the late anti-apartheid icon and freedom fighter Nelson Mandela in a touching and frankly unexpected way. The Soweto Gospel Choir performed for about 3 minutes in a Woolworths store in the Parkview suburb of Johannesburg. Between the food aisles, choir members dressed as Woolworths staff members started singing Johnny Clegg's Asimbongananga. Many people who have watched the video on YouTube say that tribute moved them to tears and gave them goosebumps.
Asimbonanga, Mandela thina laphe khona, laphe hleli khona. Asimbonanga, hey wena, hey wena, hey wena, hey wena nawe sofika nini la sakhona asimbonanga.
Certainly well worth watching all 2+ minutes of it online. Now, Woolworths aren't the only business seeking to cash in on the rare window of opportunity resulting from the surge of international attention and traffic of world leaders and tourists all arriving in South Africa to mourn Nelson Mandela. CCTV's Angela Coppola explains.
But it's not all bad news. Entrepreneurs are hard at work at various Mandela Memorial events. The problem is that this is an opportunistic moment.
Much has been made about unemployment levels in South Africa and the spirit of entrepreneurship that people say isn't evident. Well, it's evident here outside the Mandela House, where people are congregating to pay their respects. The entrepreneurs are here making a living.
If someone can come and buy my works, I will be happy, because I just wanted some other money to pledge for the opening of Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital.
Today I'm selling my stuff. A t-shirt for Madiba t-shirt for the condolences for him.
The country's unemployment figures remain daunting. More and more people, though, are turning to self-employment. While the country has partially exploited its nature tourism sector, the passing of Mr. Mandela may well present the next big business opportunity.
I think it's possible, and I put it no stronger than that, but I think it's possible that the Mandela legacy could be far greater following his death than it ever was when he was alive.
There are two positive elements to this tragic event.
And I think the hard component is the business and tourism improvement that you'll get out of the spend, a traveller's wallet, a visitor's wallet, in essence. The second, and this is arguably impossible to measure, but I think that there is evidence of this, is the improved fabric, the sentiment that surrounds South Africa being generated internally and externally. And both of those components are likely to, I think, to work in our favour.
Until this potential opportunity is developed, the longer-term economic outlook for the country remains bleak. The expectation is that growth rates will be nowhere near what policymakers are hoping for.
The economic forecast for 2013 is a 2% growth rate. It doesn't look much better for 2014. And the small entrepreneurs who are trying to eke out a living are suffering. Hopefully things will change in 2015. I'm Angelo Coppola for CCTV in Pretoria.
Right then, let's examine that in a bit more detail. CCTV's Angelo Coppola is in Johannesburg. Miriam Bemard is live in London. They both join us on the line right now. Angelo, let's start with you. What do we know about hotel bookings and traffic into and out of the main airports, really, in South Africa to date?
Well, let's just go to the hotel bookings and let's look at Johannesburg very briefly. When Mr. Mandela's death was announced, the hotel bookings picked up tremendously. Government tried to block book as many of the hotels in Johannesburg and Pretoria as they could because they weren't sure how many people, how many dignitaries, how big those delegations were that were going to be coming through. So what happened was that the guests that were staying in those hotels, we're being told, were asked if they would like to move to other hotels so that the government delegations could all stay in one place. We do believe that some money was changing hands to get those guests to move to other hotels for those block bookings. So that was on the hotels in Johannesburg. In terms of Kunu, there's not much of an infrastructure down there, as we know, and any accommodation was snapped up in a hurry and mostly by the media. We have 1,500 accredited media in the country from all over the world. Problem there is, or the benefit there is, that the sale or the rentals of camper vans skyrocketed as soon as the accommodation was gone in Kunu. So we do know that Kunu is now full to the brim, and so is East London. In terms of the airports, we spent Monday at Lanseria International, which is on the western side of Johannesburg. And that's traditionally where all the charter planes come into. The likes of Oprah and Richard Branson and characters like that all flew into that airport because it's a charter place. They could stop, climb out, and literally the plane would take off and go and park somewhere else. The traffic there on Monday tripled during the course of the day and into Tuesday morning, just before the memorial service. OR Tambo, on the other hand, wasn't that busy. It was a little bit up. But what's also happened now internally is that flights from Johannesburg down to the Eastern Cape have been fully booked, and SAA, the national carrier, has upped its ratio a bit there. Ramah?
Indeed. Miriam, some very interesting numbers coming there from Angelo. Now that South Africa has been front and centre, getting attention from global media really for the last, well, couple of days, how does this then translate into tourism and travel revenue from South Africa? What are the analysts expecting?
Well, Ramah, it's already being called the Mandela effect, and analysts on this end agree that South Africa's infrastructure has been fully equipped to manage the demands for this week. Now, the question is whether or not the momentum for tourism will last and how long. Experts are saying that there will likely be an ongoing influx of foreign visitors for months to come, forecasting tourism to see a jump of about 10%. But domestic travel, as Angela was just saying, will also rise, although that'll be calculated separately. Now, data firm Euromonitor suggests that South Africa could use the boost after only about getting a 5% increase in 2012 in tourism.
Indeed, Angela, when South African officials were planning around this event originally, did they really expect this much traffic?
Well, the traffic in terms of air traffic, they kind of anticipated because they realized that a lot of the delegates, or in fact the celebrities, those high-level and medium-level celebrities, would probably not use commercial planes. So they would be flying in on charters. So the airports that can cater for that charter transport were ready for it. They didn't really have to upscale anything. They just had to, as one air traffic controller put it to me, move things around a little bit quicker and a little bit smarter. So those airports were acting as sort of bus stops. Fly in, drop your cargo and fly out again. So they kind of knew it was going to happen. The issue is around the airport near Kunu, which is now since Friday going to be declared a no-fly zone, and only leaders with their own jets would be flying into that space. So that's not a commercial airport for the duration of the service that's happening on Sunday. But generally, they did anticipate it. There hasn't been that much of an uptick, though, in the commercial flights that are coming into our major airports at the moment, Ramah.
Indeed. Unfortunately, we'll have to leave you there for the time being, but thank you very much for your feedback. CCTV's Angelo Coppola in Johannesburg and Miriam Bemard live in London. Let's move on to the first break of this segment. Here's what's coming up next. The Russian direct investment fund eyes several large investments in Egypt. We'll be examining that bet in North Africa when we come back.
BizAsia. Asia means business.
Welcome back. Let's talk about the Russian Direct Investment Fund. It's a $20 billion fund established by the Russian government in 2011 in order to make equity investments in high-growth sectors of the Russian economy. Half of its budget is financed by partnerships with several government-run institutions, like the China Investment Corporation, for example. Now, even though it has invested heavily in Russia, the RDIF is now seeking opportunities elsewhere beyond Russia's borders, and Egypt is one of the targets on its radar. CCTV's Yasser Kim met with Kirill Dmitriev, the RDIF CEO, and they spoke about the fund's future plans in Egypt.
Russian Direct Investment Fund was created really as a platform for Russia to partner with the leading institutional investors in the world. We established partnership with Mubadala from Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, and some other nations such as Korea, China, Japan, Italy, France. And together we have a very large pool of capital that is looking for interesting investment opportunities around the world. And all of this we are doing in partnerships, first of all, with United Arab Emirates, because they've been really a big driving force behind investments in Egypt. So we are not thinking about investing ourselves, but with our partners who are thinking about Egypt and believe that Egypt is an interesting investment destination.
In spite of the political upheaval in the country, Dmitriev still sees potential in the Egyptian market.
We believe that Egypt is gaining on its way to stability and needs to attract investments, which can be foundation of future growth. It's really driven by the number of interesting projects, and we also believe in synergy between Russia and Egypt. For example, Russia is exporting lots of grains to the world. So if we invest in some of the Egypt agriculture infrastructure, it's very good for Egypt. It's also good for Russia because it has good distribution points. So we believe there is major synergy between Russia and Egypt on a number of fronts. Nuclear energy could also be a very interesting point, because Egypt just announced its nuclear energy program. Well, Russia is one of the largest construction company for nuclear plants all over the world. So I think there are lots of very specific opportunities where we can invest in together with other world investors.
However, there are certain conditions that need to be met before finalizing the new projects.
First of all, it's maintaining security and stability, because when you have security and stability, then you have investments, then you have growth, and that's very important. But it's also presenting really a list of prioritized projects where investors can make attractive rate of return, because it's very easy to focus on 2,500 projects, but only a certain subset of them would have attractive return profile. So I think it's very important to do some demonstration, almost best example projects with some of the lead investors in the world to show that they can make nice return in Egypt, and then other investors will follow. So if Egypt has those signature projects that allow for attractive rate of return, most of the leading investors will be investing, and much more capital will come in after that.
Dmitriev says 2014 could be the year that witnesses a boom in Russian investments to Egypt.
The next step is basically to try to identify, very specific projects, and we already have 4 we are looking at very concretely, and then do more analysis, do more due diligence, and then consider pursuing them next year.
Yasser Hakim, CCTV, Cairo.
For more than a decade, African countries have enjoyed duty-free access to the U.S. market through an aid-through-trade deal known as AGOA. American goodwill, however, does appear to be running out. Some American businesses are now demanding that the same trade preferences from African countries have to apply in a reciprocal manner. South Africa, for example, has lots of U.S. lawmakers particularly riled up. They say it's time Africa's strongest economy started playing by the same rules as everybody else. Here's CCTV's Nina Maria Potts with the details from Washington.
Before South Africa shut American chicken exports out of the market, the U.S. was exporting between 55 and 60,000 metric tons of poultry a year. That amounts to an annual loss of some $60 million over the past 10 years, which is why, with U.S. trade preferences for Africa up for renewal, U.S. food producers are saying enough is enough.
We're in favor of development. We're in favor of a preference for Africa. However, in the case of South Africa has imposed special duties on our chicken going into South Africa.
At stake is a piece of legislation known as AGOA, the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, which is up for renewal in 2015. The law, passed by Congress in 2000, is effectively a one-way system of U.S. trade preferences, allowing African countries to get a wide range of products onto the U.S. market for free. African nations want to see those trade preferences made permanent, arguing they need more time to make their economies regionally integrated and globally competitive. Experts say it is an argument that holds water.
The whole idea is for preferences to be temporary while countries develop their capacity and become more developed and wealthier. So making the program permanent wouldn't guarantee that any particular country is going to have permanent benefits.
But the U.S. business community insists a permanent extension of trade preferences would be foolish, warning Africa's biggest economies to think long and hard about the message they're sending to U.S. investors if they continue to lock them out.
At the end of the day, these governments have to establish policies that want to entice people to invest there. So while AGOA is an aid for trade model, it is a trade tool at the end of the day, and trade works both ways.
Singling out economic heavyweights like South Africa will hurt regional integration, according to South African government officials here in Washington. But U.S. food producers say that's South Africa's problem, arguing protectionism is not the answer.
We don't think there's a reciprocity on the part of South Africa, and we think that it's time that they lived up to their responsibilities as a trading country.
The U.S. administration says it's keeping an open mind, believing the current system of trade preferences for African countries does need extending, but not without careful consideration. As Africa's strongest economy, South Africa is coming under mounting pressure to make its case ahead of a public hearing on Capitol Hill on January the 14th. And what U.S. lawmakers will really want to know is, are the current trade preferences really serving as a development tool, or are countries like South Africa basically exploiting America's goodwill? Nina Maria Potts, CCTV in Washington.
Right then, onto the markets now. The pre-Christmas holiday season, equity position consolidation, it's still very much in full swing, really. The all-share index in Nigeria relatively flat in trading today. The all-share index in South Africa, however, down by well over 2 percentage points. The 20-share index closed today, of course, as a public holiday in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. And the EGX 30 up by 1.79%. We'll keep tabs on these numbers and give you an update tomorrow at 10:00 GMT